Welcome to another Access tutorial. Today, I'd like to talk about conditional analyses, the use of if-then statements and querying the user when you run a query to provide a parameter or a limit or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull open the Access database here. What I want to do is show you that in this particular one, I'm going to just put it in design view straight off. What we have here is a thing called a parameter query. Over here, the item to look at here is this criteria down here in brackets. Now, what's unique about that item in brackets is that enter system period is not a field name. If you look at all of these, you'll see that it's not a field name. So it is treated a little bit differently, and there's actually an order of operations that dictates how an item like that in the criteria is treated. You know, first thing it does is it checks to see if it's a field name. And of course, if it's a field name, it just puts in that field value. The second thing is if it's not a field name, Access checks to see if it's a calculated field someplace. So it's going to look in the rest of the data here to see if it's a calculated field in any way. You know, where you'd have the alias, let's say, in front of PO number or something. It's going to check to see if there's an alias there that has a calculation under it. And then the next thing it's going to check for is that if it's not a calculated field, it's going to assume that that you want to ask the user for the parameter. In other words, if it doesn't know what to do, it's going to ask the user. So by default, putting it in brackets and making sure it's not a field name or a calculated value creates a prompt. So if we run this, what you'll see there is it'll ask enter system period. So if I put in 2012-03, I'm not sure if that's actually a value, and I click OK, 2012-03 gives me all the POs that were written in the period of March in 2012. So what happens here is it gives us the ability to actively interact with the user in real time so that we can create very flexible queries that allow us to gather information as we go, rather than having several canned queries and having to choose between those canned queries and have multiple buttons executing different queries. We can write one query and just ask the user what parameter is necessary. So let's show you how you can use a parameter. I'm going to go ahead and open this one in design view here. Here you'll notice we use the parameter query in three different areas. We use the between function here on the period to determine starting period and ending period. So what it's going to do is it's going to say between whatever the user gives me as a starting period, and note up here there is no value called starting period in either one of these tables, and then ending period, and the same is true there. So it's going to go through its three checks and end up at the default to say I don't know what it is, and it's going to ask the user. So that's what we want. Over here under line total, we want to say anything less than a certain dollar amount here. We're going to look for a dollar amount limit there, and the parameter question we're going to ask is enter dollar amount. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this query, see how it goes. Well, there's our starting period, so let's put in 2012-03, and then if we click OK there, ending period, let's go 2012-05, and then enter the dollar amount. Let's say 10,000. Whoops, 10,000 instead of 100,000. Okay, and so then we got 2,178 rows of POs that were less than $10,000 and between periods to 2012-03, and if we click this down arrow here to see what values are listed, we get 2003-05, which is the starting period and ending period that I did in fact enter in the two prompts. So that allows us to interact with the user and use it in many different ways. You can put that parameter in any situation where you need to actually get input from the user. Okay, so what I want to do now is introduce the if-then function in a special case. Like, for example, when I open this one, what I see is I'm getting an error here in the percentage. This error is because I have a 0 in the forecast. And what I'm trying to do is divide actual by forecast so that I can see the percent of forecast, whether I'm over or under, or what percent that I've met so far in the year. Maybe it's 3/4 of the year and I expect it to be at 75% right now. That allows me to see whether I'm over the 75% or under, that type of thing. But I don't want division by 0 there if I just don't have a forecast for that particular product. So without a forecast there, I don't want the divide by 0 there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up and I'm going to use my if-then statement to capture this forecast being 0 and do something with it before I actually do the actual divided by forecast division that I want to do to create that percent. So let's go ahead and review a little bit of what we talked about in previous videos by going up to the builder and reviewing a little bit how to use the builder here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my cursor before the actual here. And you can put the cursor anywhere you want. that just happens to be my preference of where to put it. Down here under program flow, I find the if statement. I could also look under all and just scroll down until I got to if I wanted to. Either way, whichever works for you. Now, I don't need this following expression, so I'm going to delete that. And I don't need this preceding expression here, so I'll go ahead and delete that. Now, the expression here is if forecast, so I'm going to copy that over there, equals 0, not O, you want 0 in there, then what I want to do is I just want to put a 0 in there. But if the forecast doesn't equal 0, I want to actually do this division problem here. Okay, so what you're seeing is if forecast equals 0, then I'm just going to put a 0 in there. Otherwise, I'm going to actually do the formula. So when I click OK here, I'll go ahead and tab out there. Remember, tabbing out allows it to do the syntax checking. Make sure you don't have an extraneous parenthesis or a comma or anything before you run it. And then if I go ahead and run it, bingo, I've got 0 forecast and I have 0 there for the percent. In other words, you would interpret that as I couldn't calculate it because there was no forecast, okay? So that's one way to put in an if-then statement and be able to get it to work for you, okay? And so there's another group of this. Now, if you have a simple yes, no, or two alternatives to a problem so that you could say, if it's this, then do that, or if it's not this, do the other. If it's simple in that way, if-then statements work really, really well. But what happens if you've got 3 conditions or maybe 4 conditions? If you have more than just 2 conditions, it can be cumbersome to create what they call nested if-then statements. So what that would end up looking like is you would have if this condition, then if another condition, then if maybe another condition, if you've got 4, then such and such. Okay, so you'd have if this condition, you give the yes proposition, but if not, you do another if that says if it's this condition, do that one. And then in the not condition, in the false condition, you do yes, yet another if that says if it's this one, do that. And then you're left with your 4th alternative, because if it's not any of the other 3, then you obviously default to the 4th one. So in your last one, you have then the false condition, and then close paren, close paren, close paren to close all your if statements. And see, that nesting can get kind of cumbersome after a while. So let's take a quick look at an alternative. And that alternative is a switch statement. And they've used the switch statement in this particular example, where in if the revenue is less than 1,000, then I'm going to put it in group D as in David. If revenue is less than 5,000, then group C. But if revenue is less than 10,000, I'm going to put it in group B, I mean. But if it's greater than 10,000, it's going to go into group A. So my small revenue customers are going to be in group D, a little bit higher C, bit higher, it's going to be B. But if my big customers are going to be group A customers, and those are the ones I'm going to focus on for my marketing campaigns or whatever the scenario is. Now, one thing to note here is, well, C is also, greater, it's also less than, D might be also less than 5,000 and also less than 10,000 and could also be an A because it's less than all of those. Well, the thing is, what happens here in the switch statement, like all formulas, it goes left to right. So it's going to evaluate revenue less than 1,000, and it's going to put it in the D column, and it's going to quit. If it finds that it goes to the false, then it's going to execute this one because it doesn't evaluate to true under less than 1,000. It's going to do the less than 5,000 and check it. Then it's going to do less than 10,000 and check it. And if it finds that it's not less than 10,000, it's going to go all the way to the end and say, well, there aren't any conditions there. If it's less than all those, it's just going to say A. So your true condition at the end is your default condition. So that's one way to get around the if-then statement having to be nested multiple times, so that the if-then statement can truly, so that you can use the switch statement to greatly simplify a nested if-then statement. Okay, so that's all for today. I hope that has helped you. Remember, it was the parameter query, it was the if-then statement, and the switch statement, all three of which help you to do analyses and collect real-time input and make different branching conditions depending on that input, either from the customer or from the data. See you again later. I want to thank you so much for coming and watching this video today. There's a lot of other great content that you can explore on this channel. In fact, a link to one of them is on the other side of the screen here. Also, please take a few moments to subscribe to the channel. It'll keep you informed of new videos as they're posted, and you can keep up with all the great content that's being put out here for everyone to enjoy. We'll hope to see you again later.